I am Calcutta.
Oh, good, very nice. Then what was
Is
his graduation? His graduation. What was his graduation?
IIM.
IAM. So before that, what was he?
Basic degree.
Good afternoon,
No,
sir.
Huh?
MSc psychologist.
No. I'm talking about your son.
My son,
He did his
NIT
BTech?
Tiruchi, NIT Tiruchi BTech, sir.
Oh, it's very
Wonderful.
nice, very nice. That's what
NIT
I'm
Tiruchi
asking.
BTech.
It's good. So after BTech, of course, you took admission IAM Calcutta, Kolkata.
Yes, sir. Still, present, he is Mumbai job, sir.
Acha, acha, acha.
Ore baap, ore baap. Very good.
He's in job.
Then
Yes.
next question you will say he's in the US.
He host, no, he is troubling me. This host gentleman is troubling me like anything. He is not accepting this, for screen sharing. Still, he disabled my screen sharing. Sorry, all the time, I'm facing trouble with this host.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste. Evarama.
Subhalakshmi is
Subhashini.
Subhashini, sorry, Subhashini.
అది మీ పేరే మీరు
పేరు కూడా
మర్చిపోతున్నారు.
మర్చిపోతున్నారంటే చూసుకుని ఎలా
Okay, Subhashini.
Good.
You are forgetting your name also.
I am Subhashini from Vijayawada, sir.
She is my friend, sir.
Nagamani is your friend, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
అందుకే ఇద్దరు టోన్స్ ఒకేలాగా కనపడుతున్నాయి. ఐఎమ్ నాట్ ఏబుల్ డిస్టింగ్విష్ ద టోన్స్, ఇద్దరు టోన్స్ ఒకేలాగా ఉండడం చేత ఈ మేబీ నాగమణి అనుకుంటున్నాను నేను.
సార్
సార్ హోస్ట్ సార్ కొద్దిగా ఇచ్చేయండి సార్, స్క్రీన్ షేరింగ్ కోసం అవకాశం ఇవ్వండి సార్. ఐ రిక్వెస్ట్ ద హోస్ట్. He has disabled the participant screen sharing. Why? Why is he disabling?
The participant.
Why this host is disabling my participant screen sharing? Well, friends, I think if I go on doing like this, I think we may leave some time. I'm not, I think if there is any problem with regard to this, present PPTs, still because I did not get
Wonderful.
that kind of, permission from the host.
Did you send a request, sir?
He has not given me the permission to screen the to share the screen.
Me request pampara, sir?
You request, no, it is their duty. Why should I request?
No, sir. అక్కడ ఒక షేర్ ఉంది కదా, అది పంపించి
Share లో నుంచే చూస్తున్నా. Quite often I'm doing that only.
Okay.
There is a share option, I'm doing it. Host disabled participant screen sharing. That is answer I'm getting every time.
Yeah, for all the other.
This is the kind of operation that we are doing at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University.
And majority of the students have not got the textbooks also, sir, so far.
Very, very, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. That's only the major issue. That's why we are asking the screenshots or PDF.
It should be alerted also. As soon as the class is over, he's supposed to allow me.
We'll wait some time, sir.
Yesterday class also, I think, delayed my presentation. And you will face some problems because you don't have the study material with you, isn't it?
Multiple.
Well, friends, let us try to understand the continuation of the yesterday's topic, that is data collection methods. So as soon as the sample is fixed, as we have seen, the kind of methods that we have to apply for collecting the data. Yesterday we had discussion on observation, also interview, and the interview is a more interaction kind of thing. There would be interviewer and also interviewee, and there will be interaction between these two. Then he has to record. The interviewer has to record the whole interaction. And if there is any difficulty with regard to recording of the interaction, there should also be a device in the form of tape recorders. They can also record in the tape, and they can also go through the tape as soon as the interview is completed. And we have also seen there are certain strengths, also limitations for each method. With all these things, I think this interview is meant for eliciting the information from the respondent on the issues that is raised by the investigator. And the problem with this is here, you have to depend on the interaction. Unlike this interview, we have another method for collection of data. That another method is questionnaire.
Unit 80.
Questionnaire is also one of the tools.
Yes.
Questionnaire is also one of the tools that can be employed for collecting the data. That question is related to the topic that you have chosen for your investigation. So it's a set of questions. Question is a set of questions which contains a set of questions which are to be supposed to be responded by the participant. And here they can write the answer on their own. Unlike interview where it was only interaction, and the interviewer has to record that interaction. But here it's a questionnaire which contains the questions for which the participant has to answer those questions on his own. He has to fill up the questionnaire. He has to fill up the questionnaire on his own. He has to write. That's the reason why questionnaires can be administered to the literates only. Literates who can read, who can write, and who can understand. For them only you have to administer the questionnaires. So the limitation of this is, and those people who are literates, they only fill up that questionnaires or give their answers, or they can write the answers on their own, whichever they feel good for them with regard to the question that is given in the questionnaire. So therefore, questionnaire is used where factual information from the respondent, is desired. It consists of a form containing a series of questions where the respondents themselves fill in the answers. The respondents themselves fill in the answers. But that kind of facility was not there with regard to the interview, where the interviewer has to record all the interaction that has occurred or happened between himself or herself and the respondent or the interviewee. There's a difference between the interview and the questionnaire. So a set of questions will be contained in the form, and that will be given to the respondent, and the respondent have to fill the answer on their own. A questionnaire is usually administered personally in group of individuals. It has some advantages. Group of individuals, I think you can collect the data from a group of individuals. You can ask them to come to a certain place or to a certain place that is accessible to those respondents. Then you ask them to sit there, and then you can administer during that time. I think you will get the information from a large number of participants. This is also one of the advantages. So that kind of advantage with regard to interview may not be there, because there you are trying to interact with single individual or a few individuals, but here you are getting the data from a large number of candidates, because since it is to be answered by them on their own, so that kind of an advantage over this interview is with the questionnaire. Then the types of questionnaires, closely ended questionnaires, and open-ended questionnaires. Closed-ended questionnaires and open-ended questionnaires. The end is closed. Yes or no, true or false. These kind of, answers are the responses for a question. That means with yes or no only you have to answer it. And you cannot extend it further. Isn't it? Mr. Modi is the Prime Minister of India. Yes or no? You may say yes or no only. Beyond that, you cannot stretch. So the end is closed. So therefore, we can call them as closed-ended questionnaires. Closed-ended questionnaires limit respondent answers to the survey. They limit the respondent answers. They cannot extend or stretch. That kind of facility is not given to the respondent to answer. So the questions would be framed in such a fashion, and they will be getting the limited answer or response for that particular question. It may be yes or no, or true or false. So therefore, the most common of the rank scale questions is called the Likert, pretty well about the attitude scales. 3-point scale, 5-point scale, 7-point scale, like that, Likert, and also certain scales which are meant for measuring the attitudes of the participants, which are meant for the measuring of the participants' attitude, Likert scale. I think you are going to put your tick mark. Respondent is going to put the tick mark after reading the statement, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Because there is no such kind of scope, only whatever he feels right for that, he has to put the tick mark only, he cannot extend it for that. There is no scope even to write other things other than putting the tick mark, nothing else. So such a kind of, limited question of, space or opportunity is given to the limited opportunity is given to the respondent, and he has to confine with that only, and there is no scope at all for stretching his answer, like explaining it further. He has to limit himself or herself to the question that is given with a single word, yes or no. And the advantage of this closed-ended questions are more easily analyzed. Every answer can be given a number or value because they can be easily analyzed, means the answer will be converted into scores or numericals. The responses or the answers will be converted into scores. If they know pretty well about the objective type tests in the examination, am I right? Multiple choice type questions.
MCQ.
Then one word answers, fill in the blanks, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So all those things will come under closed-ended questionnaire or questions. And the advantage of that, when the response is converted into score, then there is a possibility of using the statistical techniques for the analysis of the data. Normally, what we are doing in the examinations, especially in the academic tests, all those answers will be converted into scores, into grades. Similar would be the case here also for the investigation purpose. The responses will be converted into scores or numericals, and those numericals or scores will be analyzed using appropriate statistical techniques. So that is easy when we have the questions which will come under closed-ended questionnaires. And closed-ended questions can be more specific, thus more likely to communicate similar meaning. And the advantage of this closed-ended questionnaire is more specific. You are eliciting or expecting only the very short and simple answer from them. So it's a more specific issue that is expecting in the form of answer or the reply from the respondent. That way it is very, very specific and more likely to communicate similar meanings to all. That question will communicate the same meaning to all the participants. They cannot understand in a way they like. And all these participants will get the same meaning from that question. So I think that kind of advantage is also how we have that kind of advantage with the closed-end questionnaires. And the limitation of closed-end questionnaire is the assumption that the researcher knows enough about the phenomenon being studied and about the respondent participants to be able to build an appropriate and sensitive set of categories. If that is not true, the responses might be grouped into inappropriate categories or concepts. But what is, according to me, the limitation is that if we have these multiple choice type questions, and we can also use the lottery kind of thing, we just assume at times that will also correct in some of the entrance tests, pretty well what is happening. If the answer is not right, then automatically whatever you write, you get score, isn't it?
Yes, full marks.
If there is a wrong answer that is given by the test setter itself, and it is found that he is wrong, then automatically that kind of, at time lottery kind of thing is also, there is a scope for lottery kind of thing. Just assume, you may assume if you do not know the answer, you may think this may be the right kind of answer, isn't it? You just put it. Luckily, that may be right also. Luckily, that may be the right, for which you don't have proper answer at all. You just assume it may be the correct answer. But luckily, that for which you do not have right answer, even then with your assumption or some kind of presumption, it may be the right answer for this. Such kind of guessing kind of thing, that kind of possibility is there with the closed-end questionnaires, which is one of the limitations. So if you do not know the proper answer for that, even then there is a guess kind of thing. At times that guess will also become right. By that way, he gets the score. So that is one of the limitations. Next, open-ended questionnaires. Open-ended questions means the end is open. He can write as much as possible. And there would be some subjectivity also. Your essay questions will come under this. Your essay questions will come under this kind of category of questions, open-end questionnaires. So the end is open. Whatever you write, whether it's right or wrong, you just forget about that. Because such a kind of, strict kind of limitation is not there with regard to this open-end questionnaires. Open-ended questions do not give respondents answers to choose from, but rather are phrased so that the respondents are encouraged to explain their answers and reactions to the question with a sentence, a paragraph, or even a page or more. They can write pages, page by page. People can write so many pages earlier. During our time, we used to write not less than 10 to 15, and 10, maybe around 10 pages for essay question. Now, knowing pretty well about misusing the paper, instead of writing 15 to 20 lines in a page, just for the sake of, the weight of the answer sheet, they try to write 5 or 6 lines in a page. People used to do it during our time. But now, the number of the answer booklet contains only maximum 20 pages. Within the 20 pages, you have to answer all the questions of the test. But earlier, people used to misuse the paper. Instead of writing 15 to 20 lines a page, they used to write 6 or 7 lines. By that way, the weight of the answer sheet has gone up. People think that if the weight is much, the marks will also be getting more. That was the thinking of the students during that time, because the examiner will weigh the answer script and then gives the marks. That was there earlier, but now there is a restricted kind of, answer booklet. Within the 20 pages, you have to answer all those questions. But what is happening with regard to this open-ended questions is that you can write as many pages as possible, in the sense that not that much time will not be given, but anyway, it may be a page kind of thing for that, or it may be a paragraph kind of thing, which is required from the respondent to answer that question. Because here, the end is open, he can explain it further properly. So such kind of scope is available for these questions, which are The end is open, for which the end is open. Then you can also write, how do you think is the most important education? The example is, what do you think? What do you think is the most? What do you think? The question, for example, of that open-ended question here is, what do you think is the most important education issue facing our nation in the year 2000? That is the question. Then, rather than use the Likert scale question, or if you would like to focus on reading at the topic, but would still not like to limit the participants' responses, you cannot limit the responses of the participants like that of Likert scale or like that of closed-end questions. So therefore, there is a need to explain it further, because you are giving this kind of scope to open, and he would come out with his own answer for that question. So this is one of the questions that you can also quote as an example for this open-end questions. The advantage of open-end questions are respondents to include more information, including feelings, attitudes, and understanding of the subject. They can put everything, their emotions also, if that particular question deserves. If that particular question deserves, they put everything into the answer. So such a kind of possibility of coming with open feelings openly. So such kind of scope is available with regard to open questions. And open questions cut down on two top types of response error. Open-ended questions cut down on two types of response error. Respondents are not likely to forget the answers. They have to choose from if they are given the chance to respond freely, and open-ended questions simply do not allow respondents to disregard reading the question and just fill in the survey with all the same answers, such as filling in the no box on every question. So therefore, open-ended questions cut down on two types of response errors, because they can elicit extra information from the respondent, such as demographic information. Surveys that use open-ended questions can be used more readily for secondary analysis by other researchers than can surveys that do not provide contextual information about the survey population. So there is, finally what I understand from this is, there is a subjectivity. Open-ended questions have this subjectivity at times, not objective kind of answer. What is required, you are supposed to write. Otherwise, it cannot be a correct answer. So there would be too much exaggeration with regard to the answer, and subjectivity will creep into the answer, and there you find some kind of difficulty for scoring that kind of response to answer, that kind of answer from the participants. So these are the some disadvantages with regard to this. The only advantage that I can find out of this open-ended is you can study the feelings, you can also get or elicit the information completely from the participants if it is open-ended question. Then more information is possible. Also, attitudes can also be studied out of the responses, and understanding of the subject, how far he is able to have understanding about the subject. These are the advantages when the question is open-ended. When the question is open-ended, you have the advantages to do the attitudes, to study their feelings, to study their understanding, to also get more information from them. Then the limitation, of course, several types of biases may operate in an open-ended questionnaire. In the sample being studied, some subjects may be adept in the self-expression, while some subjects may be poor in it also. So some subjects or the participants may have these poor readings or writing abilities, and some subjects may also write more, what is not expected from them. So such kind of biases would also be there when the question is open-ended. Another disadvantage is that an open-ended question is time-consuming as compared to the closed-ended questionnaire. So in the open-ended questionnaire, time consumption, they will take a lot of time to complete, or they will be writing. So such kind of time constraint is also one of the limitations of these open-ended questionnaires. Open-ended questionnaires are difficult to be objectively scored or coded. That's what I'm talking. So it's difficult for the investigator to convert those answers or the responses as far as this open-ended question is concerned. It will be difficult for the investigator to convert that answer or response into scores. What should be taken out of that particular 1 page or 2 pages answer? What is the real? Even we have to search, is there any right point that he has expressed in his answer sheet? I think it will also take time for the investigator, for the examiner. They have to search for the right answer. At least 1 point out of 1 paragraph writing, at least 1 point, is it mentioned in the answer? For that purpose, the examiner has to search, at least for that particular point, even for it's a risk for the examiner also. It will get bored. If this examination automatically boils, if it's not the right answer, then of course the question of coming down with regard to their scores. When you get the fatigue factor is not interested with this kind of answer, then there should be some variation with regard to the scores also. So anyway, I think that responses it's difficult for the investigator to code them or to score them with regard to this open-ended questions, because it is in paragraphs, it is in pages, and how much is right one, how much is not right. For that way, he has to read completely, and then if at all a single point that he can see for giving any marks. I think that would be some kind of risky kind of thing for coding such answers, especially with regard to these open-end questionnaires. Questionnaires used in psychological researches. Now we have come to our own research in psychology subject. So what kind of questions that we can, or the tools we can use for psychological researches? Most of the tests can be categorized, or most of the tests, such as intelligence tests, aptitude tests, achievement tests, personality tests, and attitude tests. These are some of the tests that we can use in our psychological research. If you want to understand the IQs of the students, you have to administer the intelligence test. If you want to know the aptitude test, aptitude means what are the aptitudes of the students? What is that they want to become? The strong point that they have with them. They cannot change from that particular point. They will continue to hold that point throughout. Such is known as aptitude. That means the interest which cannot be changed, that will continue with that only. That can try. It's a trait which can continue. In other words, aptitude cannot be changed, but attitude can be changed, depend on the time, space, and the context. Attitude is changeable, but aptitude may not change. And what are the aptitude, inborn qualities, inborn thing? I want to become a doctor. Then I should be holding that in my mind only. I cannot go aside with this particular point. So if he continues with this kind of traits, which are almost permanent, you cannot change, those will come under aptitudes. And for that purpose, for testing their aptitudes with regard to certain issues, then you can have this aptitude test. You can administer the aptitude test for finding out or identification of their aptitudes towards a given issue. Achievement tests, pretty well in the schools of the colleges that you have the achievement tests. What is their achievement or the performance with regard to given topics? If any test is conducted to assess their performance. And for that purpose, we have to develop achievement tests. So achievement tests can be prepared by the examiner or the investigator to test their performance. Then also personality tests. So in order to measure the personality of the students or anybody, as a matter of fact, human beings, you can use this personality test. So personality tests can also be used for measuring the personality of the human beings, and which will also come under psychological research. Then also attitude tests. Attitude test is the mindset of an individual at a particular point of time. And that attitude may also change. Just now I also mentioned it will change according to the time, the context, and the subject also. It is not a permanent one. It is changeable according to the changes that are taking place in the society. So these kind of tests or the questionnaires can be used by the investigator for psychological researchers. So intelligence, we have seen this. And again, I'm also telling my dear friends, developing intelligence test is not that much easy task. Also, the personality test, it is also not that much easy task unless you have thorough knowledge with regard to the theoretical basis of these issues. The theories related to intelligence, theories related to personalities. If you have thorough understanding of all those theories, then you would be in a position to develop such kind of tests by you. But there are certain professional research institutes which will develop the intelligences, the personality tests. I think you can also procure such kind of tests from those institutes or the laboratories which are already standardized. Those can be utilized or used by the investigators or the researchers. So instead of spending time, if you do not know how to frame or how to develop the test, you can approach such kind of laboratories where all these tests are available, and you can also administer those tests or use those tests for your research purposes. And aptitude is a combination of characteristics indicative of an individual's capacity to acquire some specific knowledge, skill, or set of organized responses, such as the ability to speak a language, to become a musician, to do mechanical work. These are the combination of characteristics indicative of an individual's capacity to acquire. So you can also test such kind of aptitudes. The achievement test measures the present proficiency, mastery, and understanding of general and specific areas of knowledge. For the most part, they are measures of the effectiveness of instruction and learning. So if you want to know the effectiveness of the instruction, then you can also have this achievement test. Achievement test can be conducted to the students. How far they learned. That will be helpful for understanding the effectiveness of particular instruction of XYZ. If I'm teaching here, you can also have a test after the teaching or the instructions completed from a side. Then I try to conduct a test. How far the students able to digest or assimilate the things what I delivered. For that purpose, knowing those things, then I try to have the achievement test that will indicate the effectiveness of that person who has delivered that lesson. So therefore, in order to understand the effectiveness of the instruction, we can also have this achievement test. And of course, your examinations, you are having all those annual examinations, quarterly examinations, weekly tests, all those things will also come under achievement tests. And they will also indicate the efficiency or effectiveness of the instruction of the teachers. So if there is anything to be developed, or anything that need to be improved based on the responses of the students related to the questions, then the teacher has to take such kind of steps to improve the performance. If there is something is deficient with regard to the, if there is any deficiency with regard to the answer, then you can also guide the student. This should answer like this, so that there is a scope for increasing the marks for the next, at least for the next test. And the personality test refer to the total function of an individual who interacts with his environment. So here, this is the summum bonum of life. Personality test means you are trying to measure the summum bonum, completeness of the individual. His physical development, intellectual development, emotional development, social development, vocational development, ethical development, moral development, etc. and etc. can be measured. All those things put together, we can call them as a summum bonum. Total development of the individual has to be measured. For that purpose, the personality test, these are the various, what are the components need to be considered for developing the personality test. Your personality test has to include the questions related to physical development, intellectual development, emotional development, social development, ethical development, moral development, and vocational development. If your questionnaire contains the questions on these areas, then that becomes that you are going to test the personality of the individual. So if this is not possible for you, you can procure those tests from those laboratories which are already developed and standardized. My dear friends, the greatest task in the research is that it's not just, developing the questionnaire or the questions, but how far those questions are valid. How to establish reliability, and each question has to be validated, and then you have to establish reliability for each test. Then only that becomes a standard tool. If you do not establish the validity and the reliability of that test paper or the questionnaire, that cannot be a foolproof test.
The personality test is also called as summum
bonum. Sum of all the qualities of an individual. All the qualities have to be considered for testing purposes to come to a conclusion for explaining the personality of an individual. They're extroverts, they're introverts, they're ambiverts too. Isn't it?
Yeah.
So therefore, I think in order to understand all the qualities of an individual, your questionnaire is, your test is to include the various questions on all those areas which I mentioned or spelled out just now. Okay?
That's right.
Then you have the personality inventories. We can also call it as a personality inventory. This is also device. That's also tool. Personality assessment, personality measurement. So we can use many synonyms for personality tests. That may be inventory, or it may be test, or it may be tool, personality tool. Then the next one is the attitude test. An attitude is a tendency to react favorably or unfavorably toward a designated class of stimuli, such as national or ethnic group or a customer or an institution. So what is your opinion on an institution? What is your opinion on Dr. B. Krishna Reddy with regard to his teaching? Is he able to deliver the goods properly? Are there any deficiencies?
Excellent.
Oh, it's very nice. That's a good comment from
We pre-concluded.
yeah. Very good. That's how I think It may be with regard to the individuals, or it may be with regard to the institutions, or it may be with regard to the instruction towards certain thing. What is your attitude towards a certain thing? Isn't it?
Yeah.
The present education system, or you are talking about today 4-year degree course. We are talking about 1-year PG course. What is your opinion with regard to those things? Isn't it?
Yes.
What is your opinion with regard to the present governance?
Old wine in new bottle.
Yeah. So therefore, such kind of things, it may be custom or it may be tradition. Is the custom or the tradition a good one or a bad one? Huh? Think if you want to have such kind of answers from them towards a particular object or individual or institution, you are going to have this attitude test. Attitude tests, they are not permanent. Again, I'm telling you, they have their own limitations. Given point of time, you are eliciting that answer from them only. During that time, his attitude, it was good. After 1 hour, he has changed his attitude. Am I right? So such kind of, favorably, acting favorably or unfavorably. Just now, he said he will be favorable to that or to a particular candidate. After some time, he will change his mindset. So such a kind of, change with regard to the attitude is also possible. Next, advantage and disadvantage of question is, advantage, the research is able to contact large numbers. There's advantage. You can get the data from a large gathering. If you ask them to come to a particular place, you can accommodate even 200 people with the assistance of 1 or 2 persons who will help you to make arrangements for their seating purposes. That way, I think you are going to get the data from the large gathering without spending much of our time also. Another thing is coding. Questionnaires are relatively quick and easy to create coding and interpret. Scoring can also be done. It's a very quick, isn't it? All the tests that we have mentioned just now, they are scoring kind of tests. There are scoring kind of tests because there may 3-point scales means 3-point scale may means one would be 1, 2, 3. If it is positive or negative statements would be there. And based on the positive and negative statement, the scoring would be 1, 2, 3 and reverse in the other. So such kind of scoring will be already has to be in the mind. Then after getting the responses, then you have to convert all those responses into scores. That has to be analyzed, and that is possible with regard to this questions or questionnaires. But this kind of easiness with regard to the interview may not be there. Then disadvantage is the format of the question design makes it difficult for the researcher to examine the complex issues and opinions. If there are any complex issues, and some of the questions may not be written also. If it doesn't know the answer for it, how to answer it, or if you're not in a position to answer it properly also, such a kind of inappropriate answer, you may be getting to the question. So that is one of the disadvantages. And if you want to send the questionnaires by post, if you don't have time, it's not possible for you to get the information from those people who are away from your place. And what we do is, we try to send those questionnaires by post. We also put the self-addressed cover. And don't expect all those answer sheets returned in proper time also, and some of them you will not get. And from some people you will not get back those questionnaires, filled in questionnaires. Because during our time, what we were doing is, we used to send the questions by post also. While sending those questions by post, we used to put the self-addressed cover also, because we are not going to give any kind of risk to the respondent. What he has to do is, he has to answer that particular questionnaire, and he has to put in that self-addressed cover, and then he should post it. That was the kind of facility that we had during our time. This was followed when the participant was quite away, not able to reach, because it requires money, it requires time, because I don't have that much time, I don't have that much money to reach each and everybody. By that way, my pocket is not full. When there's a deficiency or when your pocket is not full with money, then they think alternative procedure that we used to have was this postal questionnaires. So I think whatever that you send, all the number of questionnaires which you send by post, don't expect 100% return. Even you get 50%, it may be good. But so all the questions that you send by post, don't expect that 100% questions will be coming back to you. These are one of the some of the disadvantages. Next one is focus group. Focus group. Focus group technique. And the focus group technique, normally this will be done in the field settings with regard to certain problems that are faced by the society. So if the researcher want to know what the problem that they're facing, the magnitude of the problem that they're facing, so what he does is, he will pick up those people who can answer with regard to a particular issue. It may be health issue, it may be drainage issue, it may be sanitation, or it may be some kind of disturbance and other things. So whatever the problems that are faced by the society, not to understand those problems, what will you pick up a few people, it may be 10 people or 12 people, then we ask them to come to a particular place, then you will ask them to speak about those issues that they are facing. So therefore, a focus group is a group interview of approximately 6 to 12 people who share similar characteristics or common interests. So if there is a health problem in the society, if they're facing any problems with health, with regard to health, and all those people who are having that kind of problem, health problems, they would be invited to a place to speak about the problems that they are facing with regard to their health. They will answer. It's a kind of interview, even then it is interview, but they will focus. This is the kind of problem that they are facing. The group that will focus the problem is known as focus group. The problem that they're facing is to be focused. It has to be focused. When the problem is focused to the investigator, then he tries to find solution to that. He will give his solution to the government. These are the problems that they're facing. And there's a need to act on this particular issue. Otherwise, people lose their life. So that group, which will focus that issue, for that purpose, we can use this focus group technique. A group consisting of 6 to 12 members who have similar interests, similar problems, common problems, and those people are invited to a place where they can interact with the investigator on that particular issue. So that is known as focus group technique. And the use of focus group technique is that the perceptions about how well they were managing their asthma. Example is given here. Data were collected from students' perceptions. What are the perceptions of the students? This is done on the students. Those students who are having this asthma, these students who are suffering with this asthma, those students were invited to a place. A number of having 6 to 12 or 10 members, 10 students who are having this kind of asthma problem. Then what they do is, they have to talk about how are they managing that asthma. How are they managing the asthma and how their asthma affects their school performance also. On these issues, they can speak about how are they managing the asthma, then how is affecting their performance. Since they are students, they have this kind of problem, asthma problem. When there is asthma, I think asthma people know pretty well about the problem that they will face. By that way, I think performance will also come down, isn't it? So I think if you find such a kind of group in the schools having similar problems, they will be invited and you will be collecting information from them, from the responses that are coming from them with regard to the example that is given here is the students who are suffering from asthma or suffering with asthma. So how are they managing the asthma? And how is it able to affect, how is it affecting their performance? I think you'll get so many answers from those 10 students who have that kind of problem and who are suffering with that problem. So I think that will be one of the uses of this focus group interviews. And here you can also for mixed methods approaches. Mixed methods approaches are used to increase validity of evaluation. It may be interaction, it may be question and answer, or it may be rating kind of thing. So that way you can also have mixed methods. If you can use all these mixed methods, you are getting the valid information from those participants who are focusing that problem to the investigator. So here the validity is very important. So in order to get that validity, then try to have mixed methods of collecting the information from them. It's not always interaction. You can also have some questions asking them, and also you may be asking them to rate of that particular issue. Then how to develop the focus group guide. So for those people who are interested to have this focus group technique, and what is very important thing is develop the focus group guide. A guide or the manual which will help how to go about this, how to use this particular technique, what is required to have a focus group. So such kind of guide is necessary. And if that guide is available, it's like a road map. It's like a road map. That guide is like a road map. And memory for the facilitator. For those people who are able to facilitate these kind of focus groups, then if the guide is available how to conduct these focus group interviews, then that will help as a road map, So you can have such kind of guide also for those people who want this kind of, who wishes to have this focus group interviews. Then how to conduct a focus group? Conduct a focus group, that means you need facilitator, the investigator also has to take the help of some facilitator or note taker and technician. So when the interaction or something discussion is in progress, then there should be a facilitator who will also be recording or note taking all those things. The interactions or the responses. So all those things for which there is a need to have a facilitator, a note taker, or technician. The facilitator guides the group through the discussion and keeps the group focused on the topic for discussion. And they should not deviate from that particular issue to be discussed. So facilitator's duty is ensure that the participants will not deviate from the discussion or the topic that is under discussion. The note taker is an observer and does not interact with the group. He is just only a silent person. He'll be noting down only. He cannot interfere. He is only an observer. So note taker duties, he had to take down the notes. The notes should include a sense of what each person said, identify how comments were said, and record when transitions occurred from one topic to the next. So therefore, this is the duty of the note taker, what is happening with regard to that particular activity that is taking place in the focus group. He is only observer, noting down each and every point. He should be very, very careful about noting all those points which are expressed by the participants to the questions of the investigator. Technician is responsible for recording the focus group. The recording will be used to create a transcript of the event. Transcript of the events. Events have to be transcripted. So whatever the events that are taking place have to be transcripted. And for that purpose, you needed some technician kind who can also convert all those things to a meaningful kind of, message of the communication. Focus group can be conducted in a person or via teleconference also. You can also have this kind of focus group in person or teleconference also, teleconference. And nowadays, most of the people are using this teleconference, sitting somewhere. And then one would go to the field. That person will also organize that group. Then automatically there will be connectivity from the investigator to the participants, and he will be asking questions. Then the participant would be reacting those questions also. So he did not go to field. He can use this teleconference kind of method to have this focus group interview. The focus group typically lasts about 60 to 90 minutes. 60 to 90 minutes, that's the duration of each focus group. If it is prolonged, people will also leave that because they would also be equally busy with their profession and other things. So therefore, ensure that 60 to 9 minutes of time is allocated for conducting the focus group interviews. So I think this is one of the techniques that can be used for eliciting the answers from the field problems. Advantages and disadvantages of focus group is that focus groups are very quick and relatively easy to set up. I think this is not that much easy also. Nowadays, people are intelligent. Why should we sit in the group? The immediate question comes, how much money that you are paying for our support? These are some of the questions normally that will come from the people. I think there is some benefit for you, therefore you are coming here. Then what is that benefit that I am getting out of using my time for 60 to 90 minutes? So there would also be some kind of questions, and then convincibility should also be there. Persuasion also should also be there. And this is meant for your benefit only, because the problems can be sorted out and find solutions to your problems. And for that purpose only, I am here. That way, I think you have to persuade the people in order to come out with the problem that they are facing. So focus group is useful in gaining insight into a topic that may be more difficult to gather through other data collection methods. So if there is any difficulty with regard to other methods of data collection, I think this is the best method for collecting the information from the people or the participants. Disadvantages are focus groups are susceptible to facilitator bias. Facilitator pick up only those people who can listen to him only. Those people at times, they will not answer properly also. So bias of the facilitator should also be there. That is one of the disadvantages. Without the bias, if you can select the participants, then it will be well and good. So at times that bias factor will also come into the picture. And there is also possibility of sidetracking the discussion. If one topic is meant for discussion, you may also forget, or those people sidetrack the discussion, and some other topics will come into the discussion which are not admissible. If that kind of, what shall we say, sidetracking of discussion may be possible, which will have some kind of effect on the focus groups, and which is one of the disadvantages of this focus group technique. So these are some of the methods. Number one method that we have seen is observation. Number two is interview. Number three is questionnaire. And we have also seen some psychological tests. And the last one, which we discussed, was focus group technique. So I think these are the methods that we can use for the data collection related to your topic. And what kind of method you have to follow, that you have to decide based on your topic, whether it would be interview, or it would be observation, or it would be questionnaire. You have to decide the kind of tool that you can use for the data collection based on your topic. So these are some of the methods for data collection. Any questions?
No,
Hello,
sir.
friends.
No, sir.
No questions?
No questions means everything is understood.
Very nice, very nice. But I have the problem that I am not able to present the PP to you because the host disabled the participants' screen sharing.
That is one disability which BRAOU suffers from.
That's not from my end. That is happening
So
from
that,
the End of the host.
Their side. Yeah.
Right, my dear friends, very important topic.
Sir.
I think. Hello?
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, please give me your cell number, sir. I will talk to about RSET exam.
You would like to talk to about?
RSET exam, sir. PhD entrance exam, sir.
Oh, what that? Huh?
Sir, please.
Anyway, before that, I think there is still unit number 19. You have completed unit number 18.
Yes.
Okay,
Unit
sir.
number 17 and unit number 18 both are meant for the methods.
Data collection.
Data collection, methods of data collection. Those the two units are meant for how to collect the data using those methods. Now we are moving to the unit number 19. That is techniques of multivariate analysis. Multivariate analysis. When there are many variables, to understand the effect of those variables on the dependent variable or dependent variables, then how to analyze the data? That we're going to discuss. Because it's not only one independent variable and one dependent variable. And your research, if it is PhD, you are supposed to include not less than 10 to 15 independent variables with one dependent variable or with more than one dependent variable if it is PhD. More number of independent variables have to be included to understand the contribution of those independent variables in the dependent variable. And the dependent variable may be at times, it may be one dependent variable, or it may be two dependent variables or three dependent variables also. So I think how to go about when many number of variables are included for your study, how to analyze such a kind of multivariate study, multivariate study. So what we have to do is, multivariate analysis consists of a collection of methods that can be used when several measurements are made on each individual or object in one or more samples. So multivariate analysis consists of a collection of methods that can be used when several measures are made on each individual object in one or more samples. So therefore, when there are more number of independent variables and more number of dependent variables, then how to go about that issue? For that purpose, this techniques of multivariate analysis is included as one of the units. Multivariate analysis consists of collection of methods that can be used when several measurements are made on each individual or object in one or more samples. And you have given a list of techniques of multivariate analysis. Techniques of multivariate analysis. You have multiple regression analysis, multiple discriminant analysis, factor analysis, principal component analysis, multivariate analysis of variance, canonical correlation analysis, cluster analysis, multi-dimensional scaling, conjoint analysis. These are some of the techniques of multivariate analysis. Techniques of multivariate analysis. So when several variables are included in your study, so these are some of the techniques that you can use for analysis purpose. So multi-regression analysis means you have more number of dependent variables. This technique examines the relationship between the several categorical independent variables and two or more metric dependent variables, whereas ANOVA assesses the difference between the groups. That means this technique examines the relationship between several categorical independent variables. Categorical. Your gender is a categorical variable. isn't it? Your age is a categorical variable. Your socioeconomic status is also categorical, categorized. Your location is also categorized. Location means urban or rural. Your socioeconomic status, you are rich or poor, isn't it? These are all categorical variables, independent variables. Categorical independent variables which will influence the dependent variable. So in order to understand the relationship between several categorical independent variables and two or more dependent variables, we use this regression analysis, multiple regression analysis. Multiple regression, multiple means many, several. When several independent variables and dependent variables are included in your study, you can use this multiple regression analysis. Okay, my dear friends?
Yes, sir.
And there is also one formula. Here we are not going to calculate the value. You just memorize the formula of this multiple regression analysis. I think you may be finding that kind of formula at page number 186. They have given the formula. That is y is equal to a plus b1 x1 plus b2 x2 plus b3 x3. So the regression value is a plus b1 plus x1, b2 plus x2 plus b3 x3. And this is the formula. What it denotes or contains, you please go through that formula. And then if you mention this formula in your answer sheet, if that, if any question that comes on this, that would be better. So the overall understanding of this regression, multiple regression analysis, that is meant for examining the relationship between several categorical independent variables and two or more dependent variables. For example, to determine whether examination performance in mathematics and English differed based on test anxiety levels among students. To determine whether exam performance in maths and English differed based on test anxiety levels, whether the test anxiety level is able to impact the performance of the students in mathematics and English. So this is one of the, you find the variables here, test anxiety levels among the students. You have to get those scores, anxiety scores. Then you have to relate them whether this has any relation with the performance in the mathematics or with the language. So there is anxiety test. You have to develop the anxiety, test anxiety. Test anxiety means those people who are taking the exam. Just before the examination, if you take up their anxiety levels, we can call it as test anxiety. Just before the commencement of the examination, you can see the anxiety levels of the students. We can call them as test anxiety. How this test anxiety is able to explain the variance or is able to predict how much it predicts in the dependent variable. In the dependent variables means performance in the mathematics and English. So these are the two subjects, performances, how this test anxiety level is able to correlate with the performance in maths and English subjects. And you have to take the scores, take the examination scores or the performance scores of the students in mathematics and also scores in English subject, and you're also getting the score for your test anxiety. Then relate how closely these test anxiety levels are related to performance in maths or with the English. So I think such kind of tests can be used for examples for this multivariate analysis. Then multiple discriminant analysis. Multiple discriminant, which factor is completely discriminant from the other, which is able to predict more variance in the dependent variable. Again, my dear friends, I'm talking about it's not only independent variables, we can also call them as input variables, also responsible variables or predictor variables also. We can call them as predictor variables or responsible variables because they are responsible for predicting the variance in the dependent variable. So we can call them these independent variables as predictor variables or responsible variables or independent variables or input variables. These are all various synonyms that we can use for independent variables which can influence the dependent variable. The dependent variable is that dependent variable is, in other words, if you ask me, I can also call it as output variable. Output variable or outcome variable. Outcome variable or output variable. This output is due to inputs. Inputs are independent variables, and the output as a result of the inputs in the system, I could able to get this amount of output. That output is, it may be achievement, or it may be performance, or it may be learning, or it may be some other thing, some other factor also. So therefore, I think we can use many kind of synonyms for independent variables and also dependent variables. So here, the discriminant, multiple discriminant analysis means is to classify observations or people into homogeneous groups. The independent variable must be metric and must have a high degree of normality. So therefore, who is different? Which is different from the homogeneous group? Which is able to contribute more than other variables? Which is able to discriminate itself from the other variables? So for finding out that, we use this particular multiple discriminant analysis. The example is the director of human resources wants to know if these three job classifications appeal to different personality types. Each employee is to administer a battery of psychological tests, which include measures of interest in outdoor activity, sociability, and conservativeness. I think I think all these things are not included in our study material also, because I'm sorry I'm not able to follow your study material properly because I'm not happy with that study material. That's the reason why I try to bring in those examples which are apt and which can be easily understood. So therefore, all those things, whatever I'm discussing, are not included in our study material, but I try to give as simple as possible. For that purpose, I've collected certain examples from various sources. So the example for this multiple discriminant analysis is, as meant for the whole summary of the final objective of this discriminant analysis is to classify observations or people into homogeneous groups. So the example that I can throw for this is, the director of human resources wants to know if these three job classifications appeal to different personality types. Each employee is administered a battery of psychological tests, which include measures of interest in outdoor activity, sociability, and conservativeness. So these are the three issues which are included in the psychological test. In the psychological test that is administered by the director of human resources, he has included the items on outdoor activities, sociability, and conservativeness with regard to measuring the personality. With regard to measuring the personality of the employees, he has administered a personality test or the psychological test, which included three areas. One is interest in outdoor activity, next is sociability, and the other one is conservativeness. These are the three issues on which the items are developed and included in the psychological test to measure their personality, measure the personality of the employees. So I think you are getting scores. Say, for example, most of the employees get higher score in outdoor activity. The main score of these employees on outdoor activity interest. If they get more score on this, if the mean value of that particular area is more than the other areas, that means most of the people have this kind of personality trait. So in order to understand that kind of personality trait, then they have used this psychological test. That psychological test included three areas. One is interest in outdoor activity, another is sociability, and still another is conservativeness. And there were test items developed on these areas, and they called it as psychological test that was administered to the employees of his firm to understand their personality. Then whichever group, whichever the area, in which area their score is very high, that means that score differentiate. If they get more score on outdoor activity, that is differentiating the other areas. That means sociability and conservativeness. So if we get more score on conservativeness, then their employees are conservative. That distinctify from the other two areas. So I think we are able to get one particular issue which will also discriminate the other, the factor that discriminate the others. So which we can call it as multiple discriminant analysis. From the multiple categories, then you are able to find out a particular issue which will differentiate the personality of the individuals. Which factor differentiate the individuals? For that purpose, we can use this multiple discriminant analysis. Then factor analysis, you have some idea about this factor analysis. You have also, I think, one of the factor analysis, we have read about this. Factor analysis, 2 into 2 factor analysis, 2 into 2 into 2 factor analysis. That we have discussed long back. That means for particular factor, say for example, socioeconomic status is the factor, which includes many variables. Many variables. Say for example, your socioeconomic status is a factor which contains or includes your literacy level, your income, your wealth, your properties, and other issues. All these things put together, we can call it as socio-economic status of an individual. You are getting a particular score for each individual. Based on the scores, we classify them. This is the higher SES group, this is the average SES group, and this is the below average SES group. That way, I think we classify the individuals based on the socioeconomic status. So socioeconomic status is a factor which contains so many variables. So whatever the characteristics or the features that the socioeconomic status contains will also be seen in the variables. So instead of studying the influence of each variable, if we measure all those things and combine them into a factor, if you can study the effect of this factor, that kind of studying the analysis, that factor kind of studying is known as factor analysis. So factor analysis means clubbing of many variables into a particular factor, understand the influence of that factor or understand the contribution of that factor to the dependent variable. We can call it as factor analysis. Instead of studying or including or individually studying what is the effect of literacy, what is the effect of income, what is the effect of wealth or the property, what is the effect of some other thing. Instead of studying all these things separately or independently, you can put them all those things in SES, then you will get the score for SES. Then you have to relate that SES score with that of other things. For example, the dependent variable is the achievement of the students. You are getting the score for SES, and the achievement, you are also getting the scores for the students for achievement purposes. And whose score is very high on the SES, our hypothesis is whose score is very high on the SES, their achievement would be good. That is our hypothesis. So in order to test such kind of thing, you have to classify the individuals on the basis of the SES, then try to understand or relate the SES with the SES score with that of the achievement score. Then finally you can say those SES very high, that is positively related to achievement. If the result is coming like that, then you can say higher level ACS is positively correlated with the achievement scores. That means who are very rich, whose socioeconomic status is very high, they are able to get better score than the other people. So such kind of purposes, clubbing all those variables into a combined one, that combined one, the example that I have cited is the socioeconomic status. So like this, instead of studying independently all these variables and their influence, you just mix them up and put it in one factor and try to see whether this particular factor is able to predict any variance in the dependent variable, isn't it? Compressing, I can also use the word compress or mix up. Then you can call with a single factor. With a single factor, you are able to study the influence of income, influence of the literacy level, influence of the occupation, influence of the property or the wealth, like that. So instead of studying independently all these things for influence purposes, you club them in the form of socioeconomic status, means all these things will come into it. Whenever you talk about socioeconomic status of the individuals, their income comes, their literacy level comes, their occupation comes, their class comes, their wealth comes, their property, and the items they use, all those things come into that, because socio-economic status scale includes all these items. On those basis, then you will get some score for each individual. Then if the SES score is very high, and at the same time, if the achievement is also very high, finally we can conclude that those students SES is very high, they would be able to perform better. That way we can conclude. So for that purpose, we can use this factor analysis. The next one is principal component analysis. Principal component analysis is a dimensionality reduction method that is often used to reduce the dimensionality of large data. Again, you're also compressing the large data into small data. So your reduction of dimensionality, if the data or the space is too much, you are trying to reduce it. So principal component analysis is reduction of the dimensionality that is often used to reduce the dimensionality of a large data sets. So large data can be reduced to a small data. Then only it is possible for you to analyze. If there is a large data, it may not be possible to analyze. In that particular case, you have to reduce it. For that purpose, you have to use this principal component analysis. PCI is varied statistical method for reducing the cases by variables data table to its essential features called principal components. Only the essential features. Chatta Chadara may be not there. What is essential? Those essential features, we can call them as principal components. Principal components are those which are essential. For example, just I throw you example. PCA reduces the size of images without losing much quality. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are following,
You
sir.
know pretty well about JPEG photos, images, Your photos will be reduced, isn't it? JPEG, size of the photos, sir.
Yes.
Suppose if you want to make an application,
Passport,
yeah, it's passport, that should also be reduced into
Stamp.
JPEG size.
stamp size.
Otherwise, it cannot accept also.
Yeah.
That means you are suppressing the size of the image. Am I right, sir?
Yeah.
So therefore, the best example that we all know is this particular principal component analysis reduces the size of the images without losing much quality. So even the bigger size image can also be reduced, isn't it?
Yes.
Stamp size, passport size, A4 size. A4 size will be reduced into passport size. Passport size will be reduced into stamp size also. For reducing such kind of images, we can use principal component analysis. Am I right, sir?
Yes.
Next example. PCA helps identify key economic factors that affect asset performance, which can help with risk management and portfolio optimization. It identifies key economic factors that affect asset performance. Identify key economic factors that affect asset performance. So key economic or otherwise the essential factors or key factors will be identified. Those will be considered for this analysis. So if we can include those essential, so for example, this is also one of the factor analysis. This will also come under factor analysis because instead of studying independently the variance of different variables, we have coupled all those things into single factor. That single factor is SES. Similar will be the case here. Instead of studying all those things, you can pick out those key factors. Those key factors, we can call them as principal component. How these key factors are able to explain the variance in the property. Here in this example is asset performance. So these are some of the examples that we can use. This particular principal component analysis can be used for that. This is the example, reducing the images into the bigger one. Bigger images can be reduced into smaller images. That is the best example that you know pretty well. You might have used all these things, JPG images and other things. For those students who are making applications,